Welcome to Campfire Stories.
Welcome back to the fire, friends, for the last night of the long story of Lucas Meyers. When we left him, he stood on the shoulder of a highway, having just told an old man from a water tower that it was finished. The ledger was gone, out past recall on trains and buses and across borders. The certain people were coming apart like a sandcastle in the tide. The collector had melted away, and Lucas Meyers, 60 years old, was free for the first time since he was 19, and had not the faintest idea how to be. Tonight, we find out what a free man does with the rest of his life.
Marty, I have waited so long and been so afraid, and now that we are here, I almost do not want it to end. Just tell me he is all right. Please.
He is all right, Carol. Let me tell you how the big things ended, and then let me tell you the small ones, because in this story it was always the small ones that mattered. The man in the photograph, the smiling pillar, did not go to a dramatic end. Men like that rarely do. He was too old and too clever to be dragged anywhere in chains. But over that one long autumn, everything he had spent 40 years building came apart in the daylight. The charities gave back his money and took down his name. The honorable friends stopped answering. The clean history turned filthy on the front pages of countries he had no friends in. He died not long after, an old man in a quiet house, disgraced and alone, which for a man who had built his whole soul out of being admired was the one punishment that reached him. He was never touched. He was only at last seen.
He was only at last seen. Marty, for that man, that was the worst thing in the world, wasn't it? Not a jail. Just everyone finally knowing. And the organization, the certain people.
Without their clean face, Carol, and with their whole architecture written out for every taxman in the world to read, they scattered. Money like that does not vanish. It slinks off and hides under new rocks, and I will not tell you the world was scrubbed clean, because it never is. But that particular machine, the one that had swallowed an old courier and a man in a good coat and very nearly a boy at a water tower, that machine was broken for good, and everyone who had run it spent the rest of their days looking over their shoulders, which is a thing they had made a great many other people do. There is a justice in that, Carol, even if it is not the kind that comes with a gavel.
There is? Marty, there truly is. But you said the small things mattered more. Tell me the small things. Tell me about the old woman in the village.
Ah, Carol. That is the one I have wanted to tell you since the very first night, 40 years and 2 seasons ago, when a boy tried to get a dying stranger to a hospital and could not save him. You remember in her father's ledger, there was a name for that old gentleman at last, and a village far across the world, and the quiet note that he had a sister still living who never knew what became of her brother. Lucas had carried that for 40 years without a way to act on it. And now he was free, and he was, by the world's measure, a wealthy man, all that carefully hidden gold money he had never been able to enjoy. And the first thing Lucas Meyers did with his freedom, before anything for himself, was find that village, and find that old woman, who was by then very old indeed.
Oh, Marty?
He went to her.
He went to her, Carol. He and Nora both together, across the ocean to a small stone village in the hills of a country far from any water tower. And they sat with a tiny, ancient woman who had spent a lifetime believing her brother had simply stopped writing, had forgotten her, or worse. And Lucas, through a translator, gently and with no mention of gold, told her the truth she could bear. That her brother had come to Canada. That he had died of a bad heart on a highway in the mountains. That he had not died entirely among strangers because a 19-year-old boy had found him and put him in the seat and driven for the hospital as fast as that old car would go and stayed with him until the nurses came. That someone had tried. That someone had been there.
Oh, Marty, I'm weeping. She got her brother back. After a lifetime, she finally knew And it was true, all of it. The boy really did try all those years ago. That is the toll, isn't it? That is what the whole terrible fortune was finally good for.
That is exactly what it was good for, Carol, and Lucas knew it, kneeling by that old woman's chair. He had kept one gold bar back at the water tower 40 years before, and he had called it a toll for the man he was about to become. And he had spent 40 years hating the man he became. And here, at last, in a stone house in the hills, he understood that the boy who stopped on the highway and the man who crossed an ocean to comfort a stranger's sister were the same person, and always had been, and that the good in him had survived everything, the gold, the fear, the running, all of it. He quietly saw to it that the old woman's last years were easy ones. And he never told her about any gold at all, because she did not need a fortune. She needed her brother back. And he gave her that.
And Nora, Marty? That brave woman, her father's daughter, who carried a key for 30 years and never once knew what was in the box. What became of her?
Nora, Carol, got the thing she had wanted since she was 15 years old, which was not money, and was not revenge, though she had a share of the first and a full measure of the second. What she wanted was to know that her father had not been simply a bad man who died in a ditch. And in that bank vault she had learned the truth of him, that everything he did to keep her, and that at the very end he spent his one good act saving a stranger's boy because he could not bear to leave the world with nothing decent in his ledger. She got her father back too, Carol, the real one, the one under the good coat. And she and Lucas, these two people thrown together by a dead man's careful love, did not drift apart when it was over. He had no family. Neither, truly did she. So they became one. Not romance, Carol, nothing so simple. Something rarer. They became each other's people. He was the family she had lost, and she was the daughter he never got to have, and they looked after one another to the end of their days.
Oh, that is the loveliest thing, Marty. Two people the world had hollowed out, filling each other back up. Her father did that. From inside a bank box, 40 years dead, that man built his daughter a family. And Lucas, Marty. Lucas? You have to tell me? On the very first night, the very first thing you ever told us about him, you said he never slept a whole night through again. Please. After all of it?
I did say that, Carol. It was the first true thing I told you about him all those nights ago. A boy who bought a shovel and buried a stranger's gold and never slept a whole night through again. And I will tell you now how the story truly ends, and it is not with the pillar falling or the ledger flying or even the old woman in the village, lovely as that is. It ends on an ordinary night, a year or so after all of it, in a small house on the coast, no longer hidden, under his own true name at last. Lucas Meyers, an old man, went to bed, and he closed his eyes. And he slept. And he woke Carol, and it was morning, full morning, light in the window, birds going. And he lay there a long moment not understanding because something was different, something was wrong, and then he understood what it was. He had slept the whole night through. For the first time since he was 19 years old, on a dark road with a shovel and a terrible choice. The fear was gone. He had put it down at last. And he wept Carol, an old man alone in a bright room, not from sorrow, but because he had gotten back the one thing all that gold could never buy him. A single quiet night.
Oh, Marty. Oh? That is it? That is the whole story, isn't it? Everything, all of it, the gold and the running and the certain people and the two keys, and the fortune at the end of it was one night's sleep. I am undone. I am completely undone at this fire tonight.
It is a good place to be undone, Carol. Because that was always what this story was about from the very first night. They call him the accidental billionaire, and they tell it in the places it gets told, like a tale about a lucky boy and a fortune in the ground. But you and I, we sat with all of it every night, both seasons, and we know the truth. It was never about the gold. A frightened boy did one decent thing on a highway when he did not have to, and it took him 40 years and everything he had. But that one decent thing was the seed of every good that ever came after, and in the end it bought back his own soul, and one quiet night's sleep, and a family, and an old woman's peace across the world. That is not a story about gold, friends. That is a story about what a person is worth under all of it. And Lucas Meyers, the accidental billionaire, turned out to be worth a very great deal.
I do not think I can add a word to that, Marty. I do not want to. I just want to sit with that gentle man sleeping in the morning light for a moment.
Then let's do that, Carol. Let's sit with him. Friends, that is the end of the long story of Lucas Meyers, told in full, every thread, over all these nights. Thank you for sitting at this fire with us, from a hole by a water tower all the way to a bright, quiet morning on the coast. There will be other stories, other nights, other fires, there always are. But this one is finished, and it is finished well, and that is a rare and lovely thing. I'm Marty Shepherd.
And I'm Carol. Sleep warm tonight, friends, warm and unafraid, the way that dear man finally got to. Hold your people close. And thank you from both of us for being here at the fire. Good night.